It's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America and around the world, we are Red Eye Radio. Good morning. I'm Gary McNamara. Well, I was sleeping, and when I woke up, I had that little red light on my phone that was blinking. I checked it out, and Eric is really under the weather. So he will not be in, and it shocked me a little bit. Now, if you've been paying attention, if you've been listening, I know everybody's paying attention. If you've been, have you been paying attention? If you haven't been paying attention, I'm going to scold you. If you've been listening this week, you know that when we were on vacation last week, even the Friday before, both of us were just so sick. Eric had COVID. He and his wife were tested positive for COVID last week, and but everybody was all better, and I was better. And when he came in, when Eric came in Sunday night, he said he was still really weak, but I thought he sounded great on the air the last couple of days. And I would sit, I'm in a different position here, but I was sitting right over there to my right, and a couple of times, especially last night, he would just, go into an explanation of something, a mini monologue, and I was like, wow, he sounds great. He really doesn't sound anything. He's wonderful. And so I was a little bit shocked when I got that message that he was actually heading to the ER. So haven't heard anything since, but just hope and keep him in your thoughts and prayers, and hopefully it's just something that he can recuperate here in the next day or so. But, a lot of stuff going around. A lot of people have been, and for a lot of people that I know, it wasn't COVID. I don't know. For me, I don't know what it was because I tested, and I tested negative. Now, that's the thing that when you look back at it, and I've seen enough research that says everybody was exposed to COVID. And probably 100% of the population, over the last 3.5 years were exposed to it in some manner or form. And most people, it was, it affected them in a very, very light way. But the second time he's really got quite sick from it. So I don't know if this is COVID. Now, he tested a few times, or whether it's something else. But we are thinking of him. We want him back. I want him back to the way he was yesterday because it was just so great. I was like, wow, okay, good, it's over. He's doing fine because he was just rocking last night. So we hope he's all better. But man, there's so much to talk about. The musical chairs of the Republicans seeking a speaker. We'll get into the minutia of that here in a little bit. There's something else I want to cover first. But I'll tell you yesterday, and I was talking to Alan, our phone screener. I said, did you see when that came up yesterday? That, one of the things that the Republicans are considering is a co-speakership, McCarthy and Jordan. It's like, oh, my God. Oh, you got me. Oh. And so everything blew up yesterday, as you know, and we'll get to all of that coming up. But there is a new speaker nominee, Mike Johnson of Louisiana. So we will get to that coming up in just a little bit. I guess the vote somewhere noon tomorrow is where it's supposed to go. But so much was happening yesterday. But I wanted to just, there's two things I want to start out today reading. And the first thing I want to read, and this is the poll that was done about what Americans think about Israel and Hamas. And this was a poll that was actually taken last week when we were on vacation. And I'm actually, the first thing I'm going to read is from somebody who's a friend of the show, not a political pundit at all, not involved in the media at all. In fact, is in the fracking business, has been a long-time listener to the show. And it was on the Harvard-Harris poll, and it's my friend. I don't want to use his last name because I didn't ask permission to use it, but a friend of the show, great friend of the show for years, my friend Carl. And I'm going to read you what he had to write and then what Noah Rothman wrote in National Review. Half of the American people under the age of 35 think that the massacre of Israelis by Hamas can be justified by Palestinian grievances. Jews in America are in serious trouble. In the latest Harris-Harvard poll, 76% of American voters say that the Hamas killing of 1,200 Israeli civilians on Israel cannot be justified by the grievances of the Palestinians, and fully 24% say it can. A majority of the respondents between the ages of 18 and 24, 51%, feel that the mass murder of Israeli Jews is justified. And 48% of those between the ages of 25 and 34 agree the slaughter was justified. What the actual, and just the letter F. Half of young Americans think that killing Jewish civilians is perfectly okay as long as you know they deserve it. And yes, they know this is about the Jews because the very next question asked if those same Hamas attacks on Jews were genocidal. And in this case, over 2/3 of those 18 to 34 agreed that, yes, the attacks were genocidal against the Jews, meaning that a significant number of people under the age of 34 think that genocide is okay against Jewish civilians as long as there is a strong enough grievance. The language of grievance indicates that the people who hold immoral, anti-Semitic opinions are overwhelmingly on the political left. And the cross-tabs of the poll give hints that this is indeed the case. 36% of self-identified liberals of all ages agree the attack was justified, compared with 16% of conservatives. Perhaps more concerning is the people with the highest levels of education are most likely to agree, with 29% of college graduates justifying the Hamas genocidal murders versus 21% of those who did not graduate. The young people who are best educated are the most likely to be anti-Semites. Not just anti-Semites, they justify the most extreme kind of violence against Jews. For years, we have been told ad nauseum that the only anti-Semitism out there was from the extreme right. But there is a serious problem where America's young people are being taught immoral lessons on campus where the most heinous crimes imaginable are perfectly okay as long as the victims are considered to be privileged and the slaughterers are victims. According to this younger generation, does this justification to murder and rape apply to American Zionists, Jews as well? It's not a difficult leap to get to the conclusion when your entire moral sense is so perverted to begin with. People wonder how Germans could have become so enthusiastic murderers of Jews. This poll shows exactly how. teach a generation of young people that Jews are oppressors and the oppressed have a moral authority to murder every man, woman, and child. Decades of anti-Israeli propaganda has borne fruit for Jew haters. They always claimed it was merely a political position, but Jews knew it was personal, and this poll proves it. Jews have not been criticized by anti-Zionists, but demonized. That demonization has turned into supporting genocide. The trend of younger people more likely to justify a genocidal attack on Jews means that things are not going to get any better in this country. It also shows that all the efforts to stop anti-Semitism with liberal education have not only failed, but may have backfired. I'll go into that here in a moment. October 7th was a watershed for Israeli Jews, but it may end up being just as significant for the future of American Jews as well. If nearly half of Americans under 35 believe that killing Jewish civilians is okay, then the future for American Jews is as bleak as it's ever been. One only has to glance at social media to see that the demonization of Jews has reached new levels. This poll shows that it will only get worse. And that's my friend Carl, a great friend of the show for the longest time. And for the longest time, because he's in the fracking business, we have talked energy for, probably since the beginning of when Eric and I started working together, and that goes all the way back 18 years. Another article to read because coming up, because it makes the point that I made the other day. It ties it all together, that actually liberalism is what's causing this. Identity politics is what's causing it. It may be a little bit of a different label that is being used, but it's identity politics. And it's what we said all along. Nobody should be shocked at this. The left has been using identity politics to demonize on a consistent basis. And this is what they teach in schools. This is what they teach in college. And so we will get to that, more of it. And by the way, did you see that people over the age of 65, 95% believe it was not justified? I mean, those are as big as landslide numbers, just to show you the cultural shift that has been created by liberalism in higher education in our schools. And we'll get to more specifics on that coming up. 866-90 Red Eye.
This report is brought to you by Shell Rotella. With advanced synthetic technology, is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance. As the seasons change, so does truck maintenance. Cold weather can affect everything from your batteries and air brake system to tire inflation and fuel lines. Here's a maintenance tip to help make sure your rig is ready when winter comes knocking. When temperatures fall, the paraffin wax in diesel fuel can thicken so much it clogs fuel filters or solidifies to the point where it will no longer flow. Invest in a new fuel filter now and consider adding a winter fuel additive to your maintenance routine to help prevent fuel gelling. To learn more about winterizing your truck, find a professional technician today and ask about their fuel additives and fuel filters.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. I'm Gary McNamara. Eric's under the weather, not in tonight. We hope he gets well very, very, very soon. I read you something that a friend of the show, somebody who's not in the media, wrote about the Harvard-Harris survey that was done actually last week, which is mind-boggling when you think about it. You know what's mind-boggling? The young people would actually say that the slaughter of senior citizens, the raping of young women, the murder of children, and the burning of people alive, citizens alive in their homes was justified. That they would take a poll in the United States and would be so proud to say, yep, it was justified. Not even trying to hide it. And Noah Rothman writes, why do so many young people support Hamas? He said the first order of business is to heap scorn on a generation that has adopted this morally bankrupt perspective and the older adults in their lives who have so maliciously led them astray. The second task at hand is for us to understand what convinced the younger generation to sacrifice their humanity upon the altar of an intellectual fad. By the way, I don't like anybody using that term that this is somehow intellectual, because it's not. Because the answer can be found, at least in part, in one word that is framework. On October 13th, The Atlantic published a fascinating reflection by Helen Lewis on the callous indifference her compatriots on the American left, she's on the left, have shown toward the wanton murder of Jews for being Jews. She correctly identified the origins of this phenomena in the intellectualization of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict on college campuses, which flattens the distinctions between civilian and terrorist, West Bank and Gaza, Hamas, Islamic Jihad, and the Palestinian Authority, and Fatah, and so on. But the flattening is the outcome of the instrument that pummels the complexities of the region into an unrecognizable paste that is that detestable word, framework. Fitting Israel into the intersectional framework. Now, stay with me for a moment here, because I know it seems like it's getting a little bit complicated. We can simplify it here in a moment. It's saying exactly what we said before vacation and since we've been back. Fitting Israel into the intersectional framework has always been difficult because its Jewish citizens are both, and this is her writing in The Atlantic from the left, understand this. Fitting Israel into the intersectional framework has always been difficult because its Jewish citizens are both historically oppressed, the survivors of an attempt to wipe them out entirely, and currently in a dominant position over the Palestinians. Lewis wrote, intersectionality is indeed the framework on display here. It started out as little more than a thought experiment, and it's transformed into a way of life. Pioneered by Kimberly Crenshaw, theoretical intersectionality. You notice this is when we talk about the radical transgender movement, the same words are being used. Theoretical intersectionality asks its adherents to conceive of their fellow citizens not as unique individuals, but as stereotypical cutouts representing their respective demographic traits. It presupposes that everyone in the American melting pot owns a variety of immutable traits, some of which are subject to more discrimination than others. I don't need to go any further. It's what we have said from the very beginning. This all comes from identity politics, judging people by groups and not as individuals. It is the core of the Democratic Party and liberalism. And why some liberals are shocked by this, and I haven't heard anybody on the right say it the way that we have said it so far. I haven't read it anywhere. Now, Noah Rothman and the writer from The Atlantic, Helen Lewis, is using different words and explaining it in a way which might be a little bit more complicated and, quote, intellectual. But this is identity politics. And as we said, this is identity politics of judging. Critical race theory is the point that whites are culturally racist to the point that it's in their DNA, and they all think the same, and therefore we must change society, that is the reality of the world, which is false to begin with. We'll continue coming up.
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
And I'm Gary McNamara. Eric is out sick this morning, so it's me and you. So much to talk about, but just start out the show because I think this is probably something that would really shock most people when you see the Harvard-Harris poll that you had the majority of 18 to 24-year-olds believe that Hamas was justified in what they did. And the majority of those young, I think it was 48% of those 18 to 34, believe it was justified what Hamas did. Like, how do you get there? Because, and I started out the show by reading something that a friend of the show, our friend Carl, wrote on Facebook yesterday. And he's not a media guy. He's a fracking guy. And then went to Noah Rothman's column in National Review where he talks about The Atlantic published a story by Helen Lewis on the callous indifference of, and she's on the left, of the American left, that they've shown to the wanton murder of Jews for being Jews. And talks about identity politics, uses a different name for it, but exactly what we said. And when this happened and we saw the reaction, we said, well, yeah, this is simply identity politics, add Jews. That's all it is. And that's what she agrees with that. She's actually making that point. And then Noah Rothman goes into theoretical intersectionality, which is something, a term that you've used on you've heard on a consistent basis when it comes to the radical transgender movement. Everything, all this insanity that you see is all related to identity politics. And I just want to read this last paragraph here. In practice, the framework reduces humans to their various demographic signifiers, and it does so in a particularly chauvinistic way. The stereotypes that intersectionality requires its adherents to marinate in are uniquely American. So the descendants of American slaves are owed no more deference than recent African or Caribbean migrants because the cliched racist will not draw those distinctions. Now apply this framework to American Jews. In the anti-Semitic imagination, American Jews are comfortable, powerful, and well-connected. They enjoy influence and success disproportionate to their numbers. It's a bigoted conception, but that is the point of intersectionality, to think in bigoted terms if only to understand and navigate what intersectional theorists believe in the fundamentally bigoted American landscape. But once you subscribe to this philosophy, you've just internalized plain old anti-Semitism. Through this framework, people are reduced to statistics, and their tormentors become automatons responding predictably to a set of historical incentives. Intersectionality in that regard is no different from the framework of Marxism, which asks its adherents to view the workings of history through the prism of class and capital distribution. Individuals are robbed of their agency through the application of this theory, and events are boiled down to root causes that almost have nothing to do with their perpetrators. Intersectionality is distinct only insofar as it substitutes class and capital with race and ethnicity. Everything that we see. You know, we went the other day, we went through the DEI that corporations are involved in and talked about how bigoted it is because it makes assumptions about people. It makes assumptions about groups. And you can't do that. And we tore that apart. the whole DEI movement that most corporations now have embraced in their training. And it's absolutely intolerant, bigoted, and racist. And we went through a few examples when we talked about it. You sit there and you say, well, how can any young person, because it's absolutely frightening when you see half of young people between the ages of 18 and 24 believe that Hamas was justified in the United States. And you say, how can that be? Identity politics. Identity politics and the ability of the higher, quote, higher institutions of learning to promote bigotry, racism, anti-Semitism, misogyny, presented in a way of equity, when it's doing the exact opposite. And as we said before, and I think this is a very important point, which is why we said, because when we first started talking about, because we had warned about the radical transgender movement in this country and where it was going. And we said, wow, you don't underestimate the strength of the marketing in higher education of intersectionality, or as they call it here, framework intersectionality or identity politics. Don't underestimate it, because as we said way over a decade ago, that if it went to the point in the radical transgender movement, it would destroy feminism. Think about that. Liberal feminism was destroyed by the insanity that men can be women because they say so. If you can convince young people and brainwash young people that a man can be a woman, what can't you convince them of? And that's where we are as a nation right now. You wonder, oh, it could never happen in the United States. Oh, the slippery slope. Oh, you people are just being ridiculous. Well, there you have it. Harvard-Harris is not, polling is not a Republican pollster. And you had young people willing to say yes. The beheading of babies, the killing of innocent civilians is justified. And Hamas is the good guys. And the liberals want you to pay the student loans of those young people so they can continue to learn that insanity and the barbaric mindset that is being taught at major universities here in the United States. The final paragraph that he wrote here in National Review: America's young people have sacrificed their capacity for rational thought and human decency all on their own. But the inhumanity they've come around to endorsing is an intellectual exercise. Yep. Amazing. But that's where we are. And you see it. You can see it in the polling. In the polling, 95%. people over the age of 65 know this. There's no justification for what happened. And 51% of young people, and the higher educated they are, the higher their level of education, the more anti-Semitic young people are. And you had young people willing. This is the thing. They're not ashamed of it. It's not like they're hiding and going, okay, I'm a bigot and I believe in genocidal murder, but I better be quiet about it because I could be in big trouble. No. A pollster calls them and they go, nope, I'm for genocide. And that's not an exaggeration, me saying that, because in the polling, the young people, everybody identified it as genocide, and they were okay with genocide. That's the point that just fries your brain. You're like, you got to be kidding me. Nope. If you want to get in, we do have a couple lines open. We'd love to hear from you. 866-90-RED-EYE.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley. He has the morning off. I'm Gary McNamara. I am here, and he has the morning off because he's under the weather. So hopefully he's okay tonight. But, yeah, he was sick when I got the text message. So hopefully he's back tomorrow or very, very soon. 866-90-RED-EYE. Coming up, Karine Jean-Pierre. Let me play this yesterday because at least the White House press corps is starting to figure things out. Here's a question asked to her.
I want to ask you about current energy prices and Iran, if I could. So Iran makes 70% of its revenue from oil. It's doubled that oil output since 2019, adding $40 billion to revenues. So are the president's current energy policies giving Iran enough money to fund terror groups? Because the price of oil has gone up under this president. The former President Trump, the average price of Brent oil was $58. Under this president, it's $83 a barrel. So the price of oil is more. Is that giving Iran enough money to fund these terror groups in the Middle East?
I wholeheartedly disagree that our actions are giving. Is that what you're saying? Can you say that again?
The current energy policies in the U.S.
From our energy policies.
Yeah. Seeing the price of oil go up because when you restrict supply here in the United States, it's forcing to get the global supply from somewhere else. OPEC is cutting prices of oil, so the price of oil goes up.
Yeah, and we're not part of OPEC, as you know.
Right.
And so they're going to make their decisions on whatever they decide. We are not a member of OPEC.
But the administration has decided to regulate the oil industry here in the U.S. and restrict investment, future investment in the oil supply in the U.S. And so as the price of oil goes up, is that giving Iran enough money to fund these terror groups?
It seems to be a big jump. And so certainly I'm not going to speak into that type of hypothetical. It sounds like.
Okay, it's not a hypothetical, but not asking the question that Trump enforced the embargo. And as soon as Biden got into office, he didn't enforce the embargo and allowed that money, that oil money, to be freed to Iran, who uses that money for their terrorist proxies to attack Israel and now and consistently U.S. interests. And the United States, as we've now found out, the proxies have attacked American military sites. And so he didn't go to that point. His point was, and it's a good point, because it takes it to the second level. Not only are you funding them, but by restricting and not encouraging energy production in the United States, oil is $30 more than when Trump was in office, and therefore that's extra profits that Iran can use for terrorism. And she called it a hypothetical, which, of course, it's not a hypothetical. It's what actually is happening right now. So you can see they can't answer that question, and that's why I wish the Republicans were not in the situation they're in now, where they could pound this every single day. And they could have a focal point, which would be a speaker, to do so. And so we'll get to that also coming up, the musical chairs, plus some of your calls and comments. And you can see the movement of the White House. Okay, we need to maybe have a humanitarian pause. Here we go. 866-90 Red Eye.
Top of the Hour News is brought to you by House Products. Visit houseproducts.com.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across the USA and around the world, we are Red Eye Radio. I'm Gary McNamara. Eric is under the weather, so he's not here. It's me and you. Just a couple more things that I was just thinking of during the top of the hour here that I wanted to mention, in case you just tuned in right now. We started out the show talking about the Harvard-Harris poll that was done last week that showed that 51% of American young people between the ages of 18 and 24 think Hamas was justified in doing what they did. And the majority of those young people called it genocide. And so they agreed with genocide, where you see that 95% of people above the age of 65 said, no, Hamas was not justified committing genocide. And you wonder how, you get to this point, and you get to this point because of higher education in this country and the insanity and the identity politics that have been promoted by the left and the Democratic Party, as we have stated. I'm not saying all Democrats are anti-Semites, but the Democratic Party has institutionalized identity politics, judging people by groups, as we mentioned earlier in an article, in another article that was written in the Atlantic, and the writer, who was liberal, talking about identity politics is what's responsible for this, and the brainwashing of young people to judge people by groups and not as individuals. As we said from the very beginning, when you saw what was going on here, we said this is what it's about. We're finally now getting to the big picture of what is going on in college campuses. And the whole thing of victim, oppressor, intersectionality, judging people by the group that they're in and not as individuals. And that's what gets you to the point of American young people, the majority. And 18 to 34, it's 48%. Believe Hamas was justified in beheading babies, raping women, burning civilians alive, executing at point-blank range. Harvard-Harris poll is not a Republican or a conservative pollster. The fact that they did a poll and these people, actually these young people, were willing to answer that way. There was no shame. Promoting a genocide is something that they wanted the pollster to know. And you shake your head in absolute disgust. And as I read something that a friend of the show, not somebody who's in the media, wrote, our friend Carl, who said, this is to the young people, this is how Nazi Germany got going. This is how it enthusiastically supporting the genocide of civilians. And as I said earlier, and you want us to pay for their education? I don't think so. Because if they will go in that direction and have that mindset for Jews, why can't you and the group you're in be next? We talk about American politics today, and I've said many times before, I think in American politics, that the acceptance of lying by the public is a huge problem. Not that politicians lie, but the public accepting lies. You know, we've talked about on both sides the whole thing that, you know, the election was stolen and you know, the Democrats going crazy at Republicans who said the election was stolen and this is a downfall of democracy and everything else. And as I said, that's really a wash between both parties because both parties have used that. Democrats used it, as we know. The stolen election, Republicans have used it. And you look at that and you can say part of that is based on the fact that people want elections to be fair. And if you lose, the first thing you might do is look at the opposition and say, yeah, but they're screwing us over here. Or in 2020, because of irregularities, you would look at it and say, okay, well, then if they did this, then this must have happened too. And that's a problem when you have an opinion that isn't based on all facts. But that's a whole different ballgame, a completely different ballgame than getting to the point as we are now, where the majority of young people believe that genocide of Jewish civilians is justified. And as the polls showed, the vast majority of those who believe that of young people are liberals. They're Democrats. And this is a direct result of what is being taught at our universities. And if you don't think that we're far gone, just think of the fact that they didn't even wish to hide it. I guess my question is it even higher? Are there some young people that said, I'm not going to answer this? But 51% of young people between the ages of 18 and 24 and 48% of young people between the ages of 18 and 34 had no problem saying, yep, we know it's a genocide, and the genocide is acceptable. That's the filth and barbarism of where the left has gone. And I agree with Nora Rothman, we've said this before, that all this is under the umbrella of Marxism. Same thing. Judge people as groups. That group's an oppressor. This group is a victim. And as we've stated over and over again, you're never going to solve a damn thing in this country if you don't view people as individuals. We'll be constantly in this state of chaos, which is what they want. Because if you're in the state of chaos, that's where they hope that they can get control and much more control. Because when it gets down to it, when I say it's about Marxism, it's about power and control. And they will do anything to get power and control. So you think about it. Think about how this has all changed. The big thing, it's horrible. Democracy is ended because one side says the election was stolen. The other side says the election was stolen. We've talked about this many times before and gone into the minutia, and we may, with the whole Jenna Ellis thing, if we've got time, we'll have time here in the next couple of days to talk about what's going on there, as we did, I think, 2 days ago with the Sidney Powell plea. But it's a whole different ballgame saying the election's stolen versus the institutionalization of genocidal approval of civilians that's being taught at our universities in this nation. Whole different ballgame. And it shows you that the identity politics, everything that we've seen, the identity politics, the riots that we saw in 2020 based on the lie about police. We talked about the other day, Mayor Bowser backing off on all the laws that they had passed, saying, no, there's too much crime, there's too much crime. Everything you see is about creating chaos. Well, the only thing I can look at is they want the chaos. Because if there's chaos out there that they created, well, then we created it and we'll solve it. Give us more power and control, and we'll solve the chaos that we've created. But think about how horrible that is when you look at the numbers of young people that believe that beheading babies is justified in the United States. And not a small amount, 51% of the young people polled. 18 to 24, 18 to 34, 48%. And I have to keep emphasizing that they understood and believed that it was genocide. And we're still okay with it. That's the filth that liberalism has created in the United States of America. Absolutely horrendous. But that's the reality. All right, coming up on the show, we'll get to talking about the speaker. Karine Jean-Pierre. Because we said yesterday on yesterday's show, hey, you want to see where the anti-Semitism is? In the White House? Here's Karine Jean-Pierre asked a question about anti-Semitism and goes right to Islamophobia. Well, she came out yesterday. Let me play this quick audio cut here. This is just a small segment of what she had to say yesterday. Here's what she had opened up with.
Make something clear at the top, because I understand how important moral clarity is, especially at this time. So when Jews are targeted because of their beliefs or their identity, when Israel is singled out because of anti-Jewish hatred, that is anti-Semitism.
Boy, the Democrats in Congress must have been absolutely going ballistic over that. That's the only reason that she would come out and say, I appreciate the chance to address this. Yes, I did mishear the question. As I have foot-stomped many times from the podium and on the air, anti-Semitism is an abomination that this president has fought against his entire life. You know how she's lying? That she waited 24 hours to correct it. That's how you know she's lying. Because we picked up on it immediately and said, oh my God, I can't believe that she actually did that. Their Democrats are going to be going crazy. Democrats in the Senate. The calls to the White House must have been never ending. On what the hell is she doing when she did that yesterday? But still, it wasn't enough pressure. She didn't recognize it herself. They didn't come out with a statement 15 minutes later saying, sorry, misheard the question. And they were getting feedback immediately on it. That's the anti-Semitism that is in the White House. I don't believe for a second that she misheard the question. because no one was asking about Islamophobia. 866-90-RED-EYE.
Brought to you by FPPF, Fuel Power Max.
Leased owner-operators should be aware of 4 common revenue myths, lest you fall into the trap of mistaking revenue for profit. Myth 1, concentrate on increasing revenue because costs will take care of themselves. This is not true, as costs are fundamental to the profit equation and the area where owners exert the most control to improve. Myth 2, more revenue per mile is the answer to all problems. Though carrier pay packages differ in structure, revenue per mile really doesn't change much from company to company, but there can be a big difference in miles, overall gross revenue, reimbursements, and fees. Myth 3, all you have to do to be successful is run a lot of miles. In reality, revenue is only half of the profit equation. Costs are the other half. It's possible to generate a lot of revenue, yet spend $1.10 to make every dollar. Myth 4, you can tell how well you're doing by the size of your settlement check. The settlement check is only a part of the success picture. Miles driven, loads hauled, conditions, mechanical problems, time off, and especially costs all have to be considered. Brought to you by Shell Rotella, with advanced synthetic technology is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
It's Red Eye Radio. I'm Gary McNamara. Eric has a morning off because he is really under the weather. Hopefully he gets better soon. I want to play this audio from Kirby yesterday because Kirby said, and all over yesterday you saw so many, conservative and liberal publications out there all promoting the fact that the U.S. is advising Israel not, to go into Gaza. And that there should be a humanitarian pause. We know, Wall Street Journal laid it out yesterday, how the humanitarian aid, as soon as it gets in there, Hamas takes it and makes it so they can live in the tunnels. They take the fuel, they take the food, they take it all. We knew this was going to come up. We knew that the administration would eventually turn on the Israelis and say, well, no, you need to have a pause for humanitarian reasons. Here's Kirby yesterday after he said that, oh, we're not telling them anything to do. We're not telling them. No, they're advising them. We're not telling them. We're advising them. Stupid play on words again.
On the humanitarian pause, is it something that the U.S. is actively pursuing or calling for that to be the case?
Well, you heard the Secretary of State talk about the need to look at that, to consider the possibility of a humanitarian pause, to allow aid to get in unfettered, and to allow for the safe movement of people out. But again, there's a lot that goes into that, man.
There you go. He said yes, absolutely. We don't tell them what to do. No, we advise them what to do. What's the difference between tell and advise in politics? Wow. And then this one. Jeez. Listen to this. Here we go.
Sort of as you have the Australian Prime Minister coming tomorrow in the midst of all of this activity around the Middle East, can you just give us a sense from the President's perspective, how is he balancing these two sort of immediate foreign policy objectives versus sort of his longer-term foreign policy objectives that the Prime Minister's visit sort of embodies?
Well, he's balancing it well.
He's
doing it. I mean, if you want to give him a report card, A+. I mean,
President's got an A+ for how he's handling all of this and his international foreign relations. Anybody buy that? Jeez. Oh man, I'm telling you. I mean, we are. If Eric was here, we could both say it together, but, we're doomed. You just think of everything here that we've talked about, and it's just absolutely, you just don't think, and I was running a bunch of errands yesterday and just driving around thinking to myself, I can't believe that every day we go in, and it's just like, at times, and we're not because we talk all the times, but you feel like you're speechless. Like every day we go on the air going, I can't believe they're doing this. I can't believe they're doing this. I can't believe they're doing this. And every day when you don't think it can get worse, it gets worse. And I think maybe it was, going through that poll, that the Harvard-Harris poll, and seeing how young people think, because that's a success for liberalism. That's what liberalism wants. That has been their goal at the universities. Liberalism/Marxism. We'll talk more coming up. 866-90 Red Eye.
Giving you 70% each night. Eric Harley and Gary McNamara on Red Eye Radio.
And I'm Gary McNamara. Eric is out sick today. I got a text message. He was great, as I mentioned earlier in the show. He was great yesterday. In fact, I remember in a moment just knowing how sick he was last week. Now, I'd gotten sick at the same time. This is 2 weeks ago before we went on vacation. And then Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, we were both sick. I mean, we were and on the air, and it was just like, okay, we can do the show if both of us are here. And then the Thursday night, Friday morning show, right before we went on vacation, we decided to take a day off before vacation. You always have that sick day right before vacation. Yeah, that's what we decided to do. We were actually both in the studio, though. I hadn't, when I came into work, and I was recuperating a lot faster than he was. Now, I never tested positive for COVID. Eric did when we were on vacation. But I never did. I tested myself before I went to see my dad. And so we came in that day, and Eric was just bad. He looked at me and says, I came in just so you don't have to do the show alone. I said, well, I can't do the show alone. I haven't slept in 30 hours. I'm feeling a little better, but my mind is just gone. I came in so you didn't have to be on alone. And we looked at each other and says, we can't do it. It was like 20 minutes before the show, we were in the studio. And it was like, we just can't. And then we were on vacation after that. And so I went to New York, and it wasn't until Monday where Eric texted me and said he was still really bad. And he was that entire week. So, I mean, it was because Sunday night when he came in, he was still telling me how weak he was. And I was amazed the last 2 nights. Like, wow, he's just going off. I mean, it doesn't seem like he's weak at all. And last night I actually just sat back in a little bit of admiration going, look at him go. Good. I'm glad he's feeling good. And so when I woke up and got the text where he just said, nope, not feeling well at all, just, respiratory problems and all that, it's like, oh, boy. So I really haven't communicated with him much. It was just a quick text, and have not heard back from him, so hopefully he's sleeping. Getting some good rest there. All right, 866-90 Red Eye. So Mike Johnson from Louisiana now has been nominated. Have no idea how many votes he is. Let me go real quickly here to the Hill.com. Because normally, by this time, how many are willing to are going to vote against him. If anybody knows, normally it would be the Hill. House Republicans nominated Mike Johnson. The Hill.com, by the way, I'm looking at. House Republicans nominated Mike Johnson for Speaker Tuesday evening, making him the fourth GOP lawmaker to win the conference's nod, and its second nominee within a day after House Majority Whip Tom Emmer dropped out of running amid GOP opposition. Well, I mean, Eric and I said this yesterday. We said McCarthy is endorsing him, and then Trump came out against him yesterday. Johnson's nomination capped off a whirlwind day, but one that ended with House Republicans appearing to finally unite around a Speaker nominee. In an internal roll call validation vote for Johnson, all but 3 GOP members who voted present said they could vote for Johnson for Speaker on the House floor, while at least a dozen members were absent, putting him under the 217 vote threshold in the room. Johnson signaled optimism that he would win their support, too. Democracy is messy sometimes. Now, see, I wish Eric was here, because he would immediately go back to John Boehner. I don't like messy. John Boehner said that one time, and Eric just never forgot it. Democracy is messy sometimes, Johnson said. This House Republican majority is united. Well, for the moment, maybe. The intention, Johnson said, is to go to the House floor on Wednesday. This is servant leadership. We are going to serve the people of this country. We're going to restore their faith in this Congress, this institution of government. America is the last best hope of man on the earth. The scene marked a stunning shift in attitude for House Republicans who had been stuck in something of a doom loop. All right, write that down, doom loop. Of a doom loop in the 3 weeks since 8 of their colleagues joined with Democrats to oust former Speaker Kevin McCarthy. Let me just see. Matt Gaetz, who spearheaded the move to oust McCarthy, said Johnson's nomination was worth it. We adore him. We think he's going to do a great job for the country and the right reasons. Mike Johnson has not been bought and paid for. Johnson will do what is right. One thing I did notice yesterday, no topics. You really didn't hear a lot of topics. You know, this is the issue of why we will vote for him, or here's what he is going to do. And even Johnson himself, I saw the quote, was just like, we're just going to unite the party, unite the party, unite the party, unite the party. There really wasn't, like you saw 3 weeks ago, here's our problem and here's what we will demand that we get. It may be, he may have made deals or will be making deals tomorrow. But as of this moment, I haven't seen anything there. So he may have the numbers to do it. You know, I've never sat in one of these conferences, but you would think that day one after they ousted McCarthy, they would have said, all right, let's go through all the members. Which one we're just going to read off all the members. Raise your hand if you would consider them. Because if Mike Johnson came up and he got 217 3 weeks ago, why don't you just nominate that guy? I know it might be a long process to name all 217 Republicans, but it wouldn't have taken 3 weeks. You could have done that in 20 minutes. Just everybody raise their hand. So wait a minute, but it's not done yet. So there you go. 866-90. Red Eye, let's get to some of your calls and comments. We go to Kevin in Knoxville. Kevin, welcome. You're on Red Eye Radio. Welcome to the show.
Okay. First of all, I want to condemn the coward. I have no respect for any person or group of people who commit cowardly acts. And my friend was a very, very cowardly act committed against the state of Israel. It is what it is. With that being said, I want to touch on that identity politics. See, both sides tend to use identity politics. Both sides. Republicans tend to bunch all Democrats and liberals together, and Democrats do the exact same thing. And it destroys America. It destroys America.
Yeah, but that's not identity politics, Kevin.
That is exactly
no, it isn't.
Politics.
No, it isn't. No, it isn't.
Just listen to me. Just listen to me.
Okay.
Just listen. If you say the Democrats are Marxists and barbarists, that is grouping a group of people and calling them what you see. I'm you know what I mean? I'm neither Democrat nor Republican. I'm just a plain old American.
Okay, who said that?
Everybody says it. I didn't say you said it personally. I didn't say you said it personally. No. That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying you're saying this. I'm saying that both sides do the exact same thing.
Okay, here's the difference. The difference is Republicans and Democrats exist. They are not, for example, women or men or blacks or whatever. They're a combination of all types of people who come together because they have a particular political ideology. And they think certain way, and they think certain. Let me finish. No problem. Let me finish here. That you completely misunderstand identity politics, because now I don't group all Democrats and say all Democrats think alike, but I do say, for example, on identity politics, that is a core of the Democratic Party. Judging people by groups, and I'm not talking about based on what you think. For example, if you belong to a conservative group, there's a set of ideals that you believe in, and therefore you can more generalize that because a political party agrees with that. For example, as we talked about here, on the liberal transgender activist movement, the radical transgender activist movement, I think 99% of Democrats in Congress have voted that men should compete. But that is that is where when we talk about it, that's based on ideology and what they think on the issues. That is not identity politics. Identity politics, and thank you so much for your call. Identity politics is judging people by their physical characteristics, or, for example, Jews by not their religion, but by their class status, their class or ethnicity or religious status, because all Jews don't think alike, all Catholics don't think alike, all Protestants don't think alike. And that's the difference. And so it's really, thank you so much for your call, but it's really a pretty weak argument to say, because you say, well, the Democratic Party thinks this way and the Republicans think this way. Well, we never say all, but when we look at it, we say, as we did with the equity bill, that 99.9% of Democrats in the federal level, because we talk about that, in Congress, which is the federal level, believe this because they voted this way. That's not identity politics. That's based on you joining and telling the American public, I belong to this ideology. And we're pretty upfront with issues, and we've said it many times, on critical race theory, for example. And identity politics. Identity politics is the core of the Democratic Party. Critical race theory is the core, where you judge all white people as being culturally racist. That's identity politics. Identity politics, you may have a case by saying, okay, if all Democrats don't think a particular way in Congress, you shouldn't say all Democrats. You should parse it out to 99% or 90%. Well, that's exactly what we do. But that's not the same thing. But there are general things institutionally that they believe in. And identity politics, the Democratic Party is institutionalized. That's why we even said earlier, and we said at the very beginning, I don't believe most Democrats, because older Democrats certainly are not anti-Semitic. But when you look at that poll there, young people, the majority of young people that are Democrats, according to the poll, not are only anti-Semitic, but agree with Hamas that genocide is okay against Jews. 866-90 Red Eye.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley. He's out sick. I'm Gary McNamara. I am in. Just to the last call, I just sitting there during the break there and just thought to myself how weak that argument is that both sides practice identity politics. His point was because Republicans say, well, all Democrats think this way, and Democrats say all Republicans think that way. You actually don't hear that too often. You may hear this is the official position of the Democratic Party or the Republican Party based on legislation that was passed. That's not identity politics. And looking at a group that was formed because of ideology and the stance on the issues is not identity politics. Identity politics is a racism of critical race theory. Identity politics is a conservative black being called an Uncle Tom and not genuinely black because they hold a opinion that is different from the Democratic Party, and you judge them and their mindset by the color of their skin. That's identity politics. Even in the media. Well, Republicans always call the media liberal. No, they say the mainstream media. There's an acknowledgement that there are conservative media. In fact, it's the conservatives and the Republicans that have noted, for example, Barry Weiss and other liberals that have formed their own media entities because they believe that the mainstream media is not practicing journalism. So we acknowledge that.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America and around the world, we are Red Eye Radio. I'm Gary McNamara. Eric's out sick. Just having some respiratory problems, and hopefully he's back tomorrow. We shall see, but we'll carry on. 866-90 Red Eye. Yeah, the more I just think about the last caller who was saying, well, both parties practice identity politics because, you know, Democrats will say, well, they're Republicans, and Republicans will say they're Democrats. I'm like, well, that's not identity politics. The last caller had a complete misunderstanding of what identity politics is because it's owned by the Democratic Party. It is. I mean, it's just when Tim Ryan ran against Nancy Pelosi in 2018, he said so. That's our biggest problem. We practice identity politics. And that's owned by them. Republicans may have their problems. Identity politics is not one of the problems. You know, you don't hear, for example, you could say there was a problem with the Republican Party and identity politics if they started saying that any white person who is a liberal is not truly white. Then you could say, yeah, they got a problem with identity politics. They don't say that. Identity politics is owned. And identity politics, and I'm so happy that I read earlier what the friend of our show, Carl, had to say, and I read his Facebook post about the Harvard-Harris poll that shows unbelievable amounts of young people that believe Hamas was justified, and a significant portion that identified it as genocide and said the genocide was justifiable. And it's exclusively really with young people. And it's like, why is, and the more highly educated, the more likely you are to hold anti-Semitic views and those particular views. And then reading Noah Rothman's column in National Review where he points out the piece in the Atlantic by a liberal talking about how the hell did the left get this way? What happened in the United States where you have these incredible amount of young people that believe in genocide, that genocide is acceptable. And the slaughtering and beheading of babies is justifiable. Where in the world does that come from? And in the Atlantic piece, they get down to identity politics. They call it, intersectionality, but intersectionality, excuse me. But it's the same thing. They're just using a different term for it. And they go through point by point. Even in the Atlantic piece, that's what it's about. And I said, that's what we said earlier. It's simply identity politics. You judge people as a group. And you judge them as a group as either being a victim or an oppressor. And the oppressors are so bad that they need to be severely regulated by the government. And the perfect example is critical race theory. Critical race theory is a belief that all whites, the part that we're talking about that's being promoted in schools, that whites are culturally racist to the point that it might as well be in their DNA. And all whites have it. And if they say, no, I don't judge by color, well, they just don't know that they have it, which is a great, convenient excuse. They don't know that they're culturally racist. And therefore, society must be set up with the realization that all whites are racist, and therefore society must be set up that way in order to limit the power of whites. Now, what's the falsehood in that? That all whites are culturally racist. You have to take a huge leap in order to get there. We had talked about, I'll get to the specific thing here because it was interesting when you get to DEI in companies, the training that they're making you do. And the one question we saw in a DEI training, and this was, just talking about that they eventually get to race on it, but it was basically you have one person over here who is privileged, and they were privileged, and their parents paid for their education. Therefore, they got an internship, and prospective employers looked at that internship and said, okay, you get the job. Meanwhile, the person who worked 50 hours a week to be able to go to college, they were ignored by these companies because obviously the employers would look at the person with the internship as the one that was most qualified. And I went, well, they're making a huge assumption there. They're making the assumption that industry and business looks and stereotypes the same way that the liberal making, and by the way, it's only liberals that do that come up with the DEI training to the last caller. It's not conservatives that are doing that. But they assume that employers think a particular way. Because if you know my background, when I went to college, I go, well, wait a minute. I would look and go, well, no, the person that worked 40 hours a week and went to college, to me, they're the ones that would first catch my eye. And I know because I worked a job and a half, full-time job and a half, and went to college. Never slept. Maybe that's what prepared me for this job. And I know what it taught me. So that was my experience. Everybody's experiences are different, individualized. Once you start stereotyping, this is what society thinks, therefore things must be done this way, that's where you're the bigot. But yeah, it's when you look at where it has led to, and Eric and I said a long time ago, we said, if you can convince young people that a boy can be a girl just because they say so, and they magically become another sex when that's scientifically impossible, you ask the question, where does that lead if that's what they're teaching on campuses these Ivy League schools, for example, that are teaching this, where you've seen some of the most anti-Semitism. Not from all the students, but that's where you're seeing the most. And the polling shows the higher educated you are, the more anti-Semitic you are, and the more you're willing to justify genocide and the beheading of babies and the raping of women and the burning of people alive. But you look at it, when Eric and I said, what would that lead to? When you can convince somebody that's something that is obvious to everybody, both critical thinking-wise, instinct-wise, that biology can't be changed, and you convince people not only that, but you convince them that men should be able to compete against women, and if women attempt to stop it, we will destroy their lives. You didn't see the Democratic Party up in arms, what was going on at the Ivy League schools with Leah Thomas and the threats. You don't see them backing Riley Gaines and saying, we need to protect women. They're either silent or they're for it. And we know on the equity bill, they're for it because that's how they voted. And Eric and I always said, if you can get to that point of actually convincing young people that something like that is true, that a man can be a woman and a man should be competing against a woman, then what the hell else can you convince them of? Well, we found it out in the poll now. You can convince them that genocide is justifiable. So, congratulations, liberalism. You have succeeded in convincing over half of some demographics of young people and in the higher 40 percentiles of 18 to 34 that genocide of Jews is justifiable. That's the success of liberalism. Because that's the only place that is being taught. Let us go to Josh in Eureka, California. Josh, welcome. You're on Red Eye Radio. Hi, Josh. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you for taking my call.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I'm just I'm astounded that people can even defend them. And just the amount. I mean, there's a special place in hell for people that can kill babies, let alone 41 of them and behead them. And then, for all these Ivy League schools to justify that and to defend them. I mean, how I don't understand anything that could justify that. I mean, it's insane to me.
Yeah, I know. I know how frustrating it is because you look at it, and we've said this before, and we'd said this when we were always wondering why the first thing that the left threw out in any opinion that we would have as conservatives as being racist. It's like, well, it's not racist. You can't even make the argument because here's why I believe what I believe. It's the opposite of racism. And then one day, remember, we sat back and we were thinking, throwing stuff around, and we went, oh, I got it. I know why. They think that way. And so we sort of tend to project, and that's why you're sitting there and you're dumbfounded and I'm dumbfounded because we just believe that as human beings that we all have, especially in the United States, that we all have the same sense of fairness and love of life and freedom and autonomy, and we don't. We don't, and it's being taught. And I just, you just wonder. I've always stated I would like to get into the mind of these radicals just for a day to see what their thought process is. Because there doesn't seem to be any thought process. There's no willingness to discuss. It's simply rah, 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 kill the Jews. As you're seeing, there is no, and that's why I don't like when they say, well, this is because of the intellectualized, and thanks so much for your call, discussions that are going on at these schools. I don't believe it's intellectual at all. There is nothing intellectual about it. that may be the label of it, but it's the opposite of what an intellectual, at least in the United States, what the label of an intellectual should be. More of your calls and comments coming up on the speaker race and more. 866-90-RED-EYE.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara, and Eric is out sick this morning. Let's head back to you. I'm sorry, I got too many windows open here. Let us get to Eli in Fort Worth, Texas, about the speaker race. Mike Johnson is the latest now nominee. That vote's supposed to go on. He may be close to getting it. And before we head to Eli here, just very quickly, I want to go to just read something here. It's not an audio cut. I just want to read something because it was really interesting. This was when asked what changed the temperature in the room, GOP Representative Mike Lawler of New York chalked the difference up to 3 weeks. Quote, I think everyone has hopefully exhausted the infighting in their systems and we can move forward and get back to work on behalf of the American people. And focus on the issues. Personality conflicts served nobody in there. That's a quote. Eli in Fort Worth. Hi, Eli. You're on Red Eye Radio. Welcome to the show. Hi.
Good morning, Gary.
Good morning. Hi.
Hey, so, as I look at it as a separation within our Republican Party. I can give you the best example. Kevin McCarthy, as a speaker, he represented his party, and he voted on the package based on what his opinion was. What a lot of people don't realize is he was voting on that package and agreeing with the Democratic Party to fund the government to keep it running. From personal experience, I can tell you how that affects me personally. I served in the U.S. Armed Forces in Iraq and Afghanistan, and in 2009, in the Obama administration, when the government shut down, we were deployed in Iraq, and we were told by our command team, hey, you're not getting paid, so we don't care if you don't pick up a weapon and go out there and do what you got to do. But personally, I'm serving the United States military. I'm not serving a faction. I still had to go out there and do my job. Our financial institution said, hey, you know what? We will cover your pay till the government reopens, and then once you get paid, we'll seek reimbursement from you. But it trickles down to the lowest person, which is me and you and everybody else out there that's being represented. We're not being represented correctly. That's the whole issue.
Well, what are you talking about? I don't understand. I don't know what you're specifically talking about when you're saying McCarthy was voting on a plan that the Democrats,
to fund the government. It felt like our Republican Party felt like he sided with the Democrats.
Well, that's not what happened. But that's not what happened in this case. In this case, there was one plan, and it was rejected, and so they went to the House Freedom Caucus, which is the conservatives of the House, and they came up with the plan that would have actually cut spending, but in a continuing resolution that would just last a month. But still, there were cuts in it. And it was Gates leading the 8 people to vote against it, but it was not something that came from the Democrats. It was something that came from the most conservative group in the Congress, which is the House Freedom Caucus. That's what they voted against. And so, when you got to the thing that got to us is when Jim Jordan, for example, got it. He had actually, in order to get the blue state the blue state Republicans to vote for him, did something that was so anti-conservative and promised that he would put up legislation that would double the deduction on the salt tax that the Republicans and Trump got, and in order that they may be able to win their districts, but he would have needed all the Democrats to get that because very few Republicans would have voted for that. So Jordan, who was viewed as so conservative, and the Trump guy, he was offering things that needed full Democrat support to get. And the other thing is when we had a caller to the show who said, well, we need somebody who's going to fight like Trump for the budget. We said, well, Trump never fought for the budget. He never vetoed a budget. He never sat there and said, okay, we can't be spending this, because especially the first budget they put through when they had the House, the Senate, they were severely criticized by conservatives for not cutting it more. Trump could have vetoed it. Trump could have said no. He didn't. So they were asking McCarthy to do something and then using the toughness of Trump for something that Trump wouldn't have even done. And so that's the thing. And look, it's part of its personality. Part of it is also, look, I think that most Republicans agree what has to be done, and that's cutting. But the American public, including Republicans, I'm talking about the rank and file voter, they say they want to cut, but if it affects them, they don't want the cut. And any cut that's going to happen of substance is going to affect people, including Republicans. The majority of Republicans, just like the majority of Democrats, believe we can balance the budget by getting rid of foreign aid and wasteful spending. That is completely incorrect. Yet both majorities of parties believe it. And so you have Republicans that really want to cut, but if they close down the government, as Gates was suggesting in 4 weeks, who gets the blame?
Exactly.
Can you win that politically? And that's what the debate really, I think, encompasses. And it was like, I think what they needed was you needed at least incrementally to do what you need to do. But really, this 2 years of Republicans having the House was about, telling the American people the truth of what's really going on and what needs to be done.
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Eric has a morning off because he's under the weather. He's not feeling well at all. So you and me. And to the last caller, look, it's the frustrating thing is I think most Republicans agree with what has to be done. When it comes to let me say conservatives. I think because there is a difference. Many Republicans are no longer conservative. Eric and I have talked about this a lot. We know it. We know it from doing talk radio. Budget issues. When I first became a talk show host 34 years ago, I'm now into year 35. We finished 34 and into 35. Back in '89, one of the first things I participated in was, and it was already ongoing, and it was the clean sweep of people in Congress because the deficit was too high. Back in '89, this is. And that's the last, really, I can, maybe there was another one. I don't remember, because that's the one that I remember the most, because I remember a bunch of my listeners had formed a group and they were going to be out in front of the local congressional office. And this was in where I started talk radio in Niagara Falls at WJJL in Niagara Falls. I did the Viewpoint show. And they invited us, you got to come on out. So I did. And it was actually pretty funny because you have all these people out there that got every type of broom, and they're just, they're sweeping the front steps and just sweeping, and cameras are out there. And it was happening all around the nation. Sweep them out if they're not going to do something about the deficit. Well, I think the deficit then, let me just look very quickly here. Or excuse me, not deficit, the debt. Debt in 1989. Okay, here we go. National debt in 1989. What is it, 32 trillion now? It was 3 trillion in 1989. 10 times greater now. Over 10 times greater. And that's when there was passion. And and we've documented this because it's what happened. The last real oomph of any type of unity on debt reduction, and I say this more from the rank and the Republican voter, was really when Trump first started running not first started running, but by the time we got to the fall of 2015, and Paul Ryan had replaced John Boehner, and he wouldn't renegotiate the deal that the Democrats had done, that people didn't like what Boehner did. And that's where the swamp came from. The swamp came from that. And that's really what catapulted Trump. He was fighting the swamp. He was fighting the Republican leadership that didn't want to cut, including Paul Ryan. And that was about cutting. And we always like to say, and I know Trump people don't like it, but it's a reality of what happened. Within 6 months, Trump was talking about the fact that we needed to borrow trillions of dollars for infrastructure because interest rates were so low. We, of course, criticized him on the show and said no, because it's not that interest rates are low now and you're going to pay back the principal while the interest is low. If we would have borrowed trillions of dollars for infrastructure back then, it's like when we borrowed trillions of dollars for infrastructure over a year ago. That principal's not being paid off, and now instead of paying 0.000001% for a 6-month Treasury bill, what is it now, 5%? And that was going to add to the deficit, and we said no. And when Trump said that, it was almost as if the approval was there for the Republican Party to say debt doesn't matter anymore. And then for Obamacare, when the Republicans got the power, get rid of Obamacare. Well, by that time, some were on Obamacare. They liked the benefits. They didn't like the mandates. Get rid of the mandates, keep Obamacare. The Republicans were in power, couldn't get rid of it. Why? People felt they were getting a discount or, in some people's cases, something free. And that's where we are now. Now you've got the conservatives that want to cut, not knowing whether even the Republican Party rank and file voter really wants to cut outside of their incorrect belief that we can balance the budget by getting rid of foreign aid and wasteful spending, which we cannot solve the problem that way. It's impossible. It's the same logic we use in that as we look to electric vehicles or running the grid on solar and wind. It's impossible. Can't happen. So that's where we are right now. You don't have the Senate. You don't have the executive branch. You can't lose more than 4 Republicans. And some Republicans are stating, we need to shut the government down now. Well, who gets the blame? Is the goal to shut down the government now? To win what? And this is what we talked about 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, when Gates was talking about this. What are you trying to win? What is the point? And as I told the last caller, right, we went into the break, and I just want to make sure I clarify it, that when it comes to is your goal to say, let's shut down the government now? Do you believe you can convince the American public, if the government is shut down, to vote more Republican? Or, as I stated, when Republicans won the House, as Eric brought up, he remembers when I said it, where I said, this is not about really getting great legislation. It's about taking the House, having the speakership, and educating to the American public the insanity of our debt, the insanity of our deficit, the insanity of the inflation that it causes, and everything else that the Democrats are doing that is insane. But it's going to be an education process of pounding it over and over again. It's not about the fact that you're going to be able to force through legislation. And so the goal has to be to win in 24. Other people disagree. We all basically agree on the issues. I mean, the people in Congress and true conservatives. But when it comes to right now, I don't, and I don't know if Eric said it on the air or off the air. But he said to me, he said, I don't know where the Republican voter stands on truly cutting the budget. That if they have to take a hit, will they truly? Goes, there is no evidence to suggest that the Republican voter wants cuts that will affect them. And if you're going to solve this problem of the monstrosity of the debt that we have, you're going to have to do that. And so that's the cluster that we're in right now. And so the one thing I did, Mike Johnson, when, he became the nominee and they're supposed to vote later on, and there's a belief that all the personality conflicts, as Congressman Lawler said from New York, that he believes more about personality, and now we need to remain united, which means everything that everybody was voting on the last 3 weeks, if that's true what Lawler said, and if it's true that he's going to get the majority of the votes out there now, they realize we got to do something. That what did this really accomplish? And that's what we questioned the entire time. What did you accomplish? And as he said, this has been a fight over personalities. And then when I see, and I know they're attempting to show unity, but when I saw Johnson yesterday and it was all these members of the Republican Congress taking selfies with him and all laughing and joking, to me, this isn't a laughing and joking time right now. It looked too celebratory. I have the video of him talking, but the audio is terrible. If there's better audio that comes in, I will play it of Mike Johnson. And I don't care. I never care. I never had a favorite. I just want somebody to be able to market to the independent, because that's what I believe the first, goal of the speaker has had to be this last 2 years. You market to independents. That's the one thing that I do have a disagreement with. I have a disagreement with the Republicans that say, no, I need somebody who's going to fight and has my opinion and my anger. Well, that's not why you have a speaker right now. A speaker is not there to talk to the converted. It's to talk to the people that wouldn't vote Republican in 2022, but may be willing to if the message and tone is right, the reality of it. And I go back to the memes out there, and many of you have probably said it. Oh, look what you got with Biden, and you voted for him because of mean tweets. And there's two ways to look at it. Yeah, that's stupid of people to do that. But if people vote that way, maybe you shouldn't have put out the mean tweets, which means you've already, doesn't matter if I say we need to cut the deficit. It doesn't matter if I say we need to close the border because this is insanity going on at the border. Look at what's happening here. It's, there's no difference if you're converted if I say it that way or say, we've got to straighten this out. But there is to the independent. Tone matters. How you market something matters. And there's a difference. I get pushed back on that all the time, constantly. You're wrong. Well, I hope I am. I hope that anger, it would be great if the American public is that angry and independents and moderate Democrats are that angry what's going on that anger will sell them now. And I'll gladly say I was wrong. But I'd rather not take the chance because I think you can convince them either way. If you believe they're ready to be convinced by somebody who's angry, well, they will also be convinced by somebody who isn't angry, where the tone is right, where you just say, look at this. This is nuts. And that's what it is. I view everything that's going on as more semantics than actually things of substance right now with the Republican Party. And we'll see where they go. All right, 866-90 Red Eye.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. I'm Gary McNamara. He's Eric Harley. He is out. Let's quickly go to Keith in Bowling Green about that polling that was done that showed an enormous amount of younger people in the United States okay with the genocide of Jews. That's not an exaggeration, but okay with the genocide that happened in Israel and support Hamas. Let's go to Keith. Keith, welcome. Hi.
Hey, been with you and Eric since you guys took over with Bill Mack. But that is absolutely frightening. But a lot of liberals are socialists. Socialists in the last century killed millions of people. Stalin killed 30 million. Chairman Mao killed 60 million. And what Israel done to themselves with their liberals in their country is they started disarming everybody. Nobody had their handguns anymore. Now they're rearming their population because they were practicing gun control. Look what it cost them. What do you think, Gary?
Yeah, I mean that when you see, I mean, it was interesting because that was a topic of discussion, especially the first couple of days in there about Israeli gun control. But then the point that was brought up is that there's a lot of people that are part of the auxiliary forces, and they're armed. The only thing is you didn't see any stories of the civilians actually fighting back. I'm sure there were, but you didn't see massive fighting like you would see in many states. If that actually happened, if people actually came in, people would fight back. But as to the whole thing about Marxism, yeah, we brought that up to start off the show. The role of Marxism in all of this, and this is the basis of Marxism and what they believe. When I read from my buddy, this is what created the Nazi Holocaust. This mindset, telling me what's different.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America and around the planet, we are Red Eye Radio. I'm Gary McNamara. Eric is sick. Get better soon and get back here. Yeah, all I know is I got a text when I woke up yesterday that he wouldn't be in, that he's just really having some problems. So didn't get into a lot of specifics, and I will respect his privacy. Not really. No, he just, his lungs just weren't good. So, and he had COVID. We know that last week. So hopefully he gets better soon and gets in here. There's just too much going on. You know, I was thinking yesterday after you saw that Jenna Ellis, the former attorney for Trump, that she pleaded guilty to one minor felony. I started thinking, because when Sidney Powell the other day when she pleaded guilty to misdemeanors and got no jail time, and Jenna Ellis will get no jail time, and the I can't think of the other name of the other attorney also that will get no jail time, and none of them were charged under the RICO Act. You're like, okay, this is definitely, I mean, it's obvious this is weakening the prosecutor Fani Willis's case against Trump. Andrew McCarthy pointed it out when talking about Jenna Ellis. He said, if, what normally is done in this situation is you would convict all of them under the RICO Act because they're all part of it. And then you would get them to plead to the, a RICO violation. That way you can set up against Trump that, look, all these people pleaded guilty to RICO. They're all part of the enterprise. They've admitted they're guilty and part of the enterprise, and the enterprise is with Trump. He's the ringleader. You lose that when none of them plead guilty to any RICO violation, the Racketeering Act. And so you say, what's going on? Because this makes the big case against Trump much weaker when it comes to RICO violations. So you ask, what's going on? Well, maybe this isn't about prosecuting Trump and putting him in jail. Maybe it's about getting all the attorneys that supported him and were some of his most fervent supporters that the election was stolen on the stand, publicly admitting that the election was not stolen and they were bamboozled to thinking it was by Trump, that the goal is political, not criminal. That's the goal of Fani Willis. When this all first happened, and we got pushback, but we were right. When this first happened, we said, when Jenna Ellis came out, and I wish Eric was here today, because I remember when Jenna Ellis, and she came a little bit later on after Sidney Powell. Oh, I can't think of the other guy's name. That was also prominent. She came later on, and she was. I remember when she came out. I go, wow, she's a pit bull, and man, and she was going after Dominion and Smartmatic, and I went, my God, is she putting herself in civil liability by the things that she was saying about it? And we had said that from the very, very beginning. You can sit there all day and just say the election is stolen. When you start making specific allegations against companies, private entities, and you have no evidence to back that up, you're screwed. And so I thought that most of what they would, be liable for would be in a civil case. And we know, for example, with Fox and others. By the way, I still don't understand. The popularity of Tucker Carlson with Trump supporters. It boggles my mind. Fox looks at him as the reason that they've got to pay billions of dollars. Because he was the one out there going crazy about Trump. He's throwing, basically throwing crap out there and everything else. And it was like, when they confront Tucker Carlson with it, it's like, well, I was just angry. Yeah, that would be the point. Why would you be angry? Because you were stating behind the scenes that Trump was completely wrong. And I remember the time that he started questioning it on the air, whether they had the evidence or not. I remember when that happened. And so that's one of the reasons they got him, is because Tucker Carlson was going crazy, cursing Trump out, everything. It's like it never happened. It's like, we all love Tucker Carlson because he loves Trump. Well, we're just going to forget about that. It's like, I don't understand it. But whatever. That's not really the point I'm trying to make here. But the point is the goal just to get all the attorneys publicly? I mean, to get Sidney Powell up there to apologize and say, no, the election was not stolen. To get Jenna Ellis up there to say the election was not stolen. To get the other attorneys up there to say the election was not stolen. To get Mark Meadows up there, and testifying, to get anybody else up there to say the exact same thing. No, the election wasn't stolen. Is the goal to get everybody around Trump? Now, I'll say this. When you look at, and Andrew McCarthy pointed this out, when you see what and he doesn't specifically get into this, they said, not surprisingly, this is Andrew McCarthy, Ellis did not plead guilty to the dubious charges against her in the indictment. Instead, to obtain the guilty plea, Willis filed a new one-count charging document accusing Ellis of aiding and abetting false statements and writings. Well, this is about as trivial as it gets. The prosecutor is not even alleging that Ellis herself provided false information to state officials, only that she assisted more senior counsel. In particular, it appears Rudy Giuliani in providing false information. In the indictment, to which, again, Ellis did not plead guilty, it alleges... I don't want to get into that, though. I want to get into what specifically they got her for. It is not clear from what I've seen of the new charging documents that these were the false representations which Ellis pled guilty in aiding and abetting the dissemination. Nevertheless, in court this morning during her speech, the part of the guilty plea proceeding where the defendant personally relates to what she did that makes her guilty, Ellis said she helped present election claims to the state without performing due diligence to ensure their accuracy. I look at some of these charges and go, are they unconstitutional? Because anybody can sit there and say the election was stolen. And if you say the election was stolen and you say it to a legislative committee, does that make it a crime? But if you present false evidence to that committee, are they saying that's like presenting it to Congress in an official setting? But I look at this here because all of these are extremely minor charges. Nobody's going to do any jail time here at all. And there's no RICO charges at all, which you would assume, trying to get Trump on so they could, throw him in the cell and throw the key away. And so these are all of his lawyers. And is Trump going to claim, I'm just following the advice of my lawyers? But it's a bad look for the stolen election claim. Forget about whether, the criminal, what they pleaded guilty to was minor and would not be filed in other particular cases. Now, he does make the case with Sidney Powell that she actually hired a contractor to go into the machines illegally, and that's what she pled guilty to. But is the goal actually political? To get all the lawyers that everybody remembers saying the election was stolen, saying publicly the election was not stolen, and then isolating Trump, who they point out just last week, again, was promoting the fact that 2020 was stolen. So you get everybody that surrounded him. And I guess the big prize would get Giuliani to say it. That would be the biggest prize. No, the election was not stolen. To get Sidney Powell was huge. Politically was huge. Not in the substance of the criminal trial. And Trump came out and just said, she was never my attorney. She was part of the team. He was still president of the United States. She was on stage when he said, this is my legal team. We remember that. We have long memories. So when they, after she started promoting the fact, I believe it was she started promoting the fact that that the governor and the Secretary of State took a bribe from Smartmatic. And that's when the Trump campaign distanced themselves from her at that point. And she had even said, I was never compensated by them, which means I never sent him a bill yet. I didn't send him a bill. And that's how they separated themselves at that particular point. She didn't say, I mean, she was on the stage and he said, this is my defense team. He said it. We have memories. So then he came out this week and said, she was never a lawyer of mine. Then why was she on stage with all the other lawyers representing you? Jenna Ellis, I don't think he commented on Jenna Ellis, did he? You know, and I just wonder why Jenna Ellis, I know that she was talking about the fact of why isn't Trump, with all the campaign money he's using for his own defense, why isn't he supporting us who supported him in 2020? You know, because to get Sidney Powell to plead guilty to anything is huge. Jenna Ellis, I mean, how much money did she have? What kind of lawyer fees? And that was the other thing, too. That's one thing. I would never work for a president ever. Just because of the possibility, if you work closely with the president, odds are you're getting sued. And that's going to cost you a couple of million. Whatever the suit, whether it's bogus or not, you're going to get sued. I remember when she was saying the things that she was saying, I went, oh, I've never heard of her before. She's a very young lawyer. How much cash does she have in the bank to do something like this? That's what I'd be thinking all the time. Because that's what kills you. I forgot. I can't think of the guy's name. Michael. Oh, he was never charged with anything, but he had worked for the Trump campaign. Was never charged with anything, but he was called to testify before Congress, I think 3 or 4 times. He said every single time, just when they call you, that's $50,000 in lawyer fees. And he said, I don't have that kind of money. But he had to go, and you got to have a lawyer, and every time it's $50,000. I just, you know, they both pleaded guilty to minor charges. They both destroyed their careers. Neither was willing to fight for it. It could have been a money thing. I don't know. There didn't seem to be any, you know, massive support. I do think that I did see it on social media yesterday. There's a guy who said that he raised $250,000 for Jenna Ellis and said that he owes her, he wants the money back because she took the guilty plea and said that the election wasn't stolen. I did see that on social media yesterday. And so that makes me wonder, well, if you still had a couple $100,000 in cash, then why did you agree to settle? And the same for Sidney Powell. Why? I'm not making an accusation by asking that question. I'm just generally interested. Why did they do a plea deal? And we've got 3 lawyers now that have done the plea deal and said the election was not stolen. We were led down the wrong path. 866-90-RED-EYE.
Brought to you by Hot Shot Secret.
Hi, I'm Jen Loomis, a transport safety expert at J.J. Keller, and I'm here to share a tip on roadside inspections. Drivers must always be prepared for a roadside inspection. This means drivers should always have their personal, vehicle, and company credentials organized and ready, and having any shipment paperwork such as bills of lading or hazardous material shipment emergency response information organized and ready for the inspection official. Just an FYI, the top 2 violations written against drivers every year, as well as during Operation Road Check, are log, general form and manner, and log not current. Both are completely avoidable if the driver keeps the log accurate, compliant, and current at all times. Having the vehicle ready for inspection involves the driver conducting daily inspections and making sure any problems that are discovered are immediately corrected. Vehicle readiness also requires the company to make sure that the vehicle is current on all scheduled maintenance and that the maintenance schedule is adequate. This will make sure the driver is being given a sound vehicle to start with. This tip was brought to you by J.J. Keller and Associates. Visit us at jjkeller.com.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Hurley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Eric's out because he is sick this morning. Lynn Wood I was thinking of, and he had to give up he voluntarily retired his law license before he took a punishment back over the summer. And then remember, he said, because he's been apparently called either to testify or did testify, I don't know exactly where that is. And remember, he was saying he did not flip on Trump because that was the story. And I thought of that because the other story that ABC had yesterday is that ex-Chief of Staff Mark Meadows granted immunity, tells special counsel he warned Trump about 2020 claims. Sources. This is from ABC News. Very quickly here, former President Trump's final Chief of Staff in the White House, Mark Meadows, has spoken with special counsel Jack Smith's team at least 3 times this year, including once before a federal grand jury. The sources said Meadows informed Smith's team that he repeatedly told Trump in the weeks after the 2020 presidential election that the allegations of significant voter fraud coming to them were baseless, a striking break from Trump's prolific rhetoric regarding the election. I just wanted to read that part of it. Now, Catherine Herridge from CBS said that story that ABC had is largely false, and she told them it was. But I don't have the specific details. She had that on Twitter yesterday. So I'm trying to see if they have. There's nothing here. The ABC still has the story up completely. I'm trying to see if there's anything that they added. I'm sure they're not going to add, but CBS tells us the story was wrong.
The fourth branch of government. Eric Harley and Gary McNamara on Red Eye Radio.
And I'm Gary McNamara. Eric is sick this morning. Get better soon. Too much going on, Eric, for you to be out. I found the tweet from Catherine Herridge about that Mark Meadows story that he got immunity and told the special counsel that he warned Trump about the 2020 claims, that they were wrong. Catherine Herridge from ABC. And this actually, she put out a quote from Mark Meadows' lawyers saying, we told ABC that their story was largely incorrect. People will have to judge from themselves the decision to run it anyway, said George Terwilliger, Mark Meadows' lawyer, to CBS News, responding to the new reporting that the ex-chief of staff was granted immunity, and tells the special counsel he warned Trump about the 2020 claims, and it was a source story from ABC. So we don't have any of the specifics on that. But the more I look at this, the more that I see, and I agree with Andrew McCarthy, and we had said this from the very beginning, I thought that Fani Willis was totally perverting the RICO law on this. But with each lawyer that pleads guilty to something, Trump lawyer that pleads guilty to something out there. Is it about actually getting Trump, or is it about isolating him, knowing that Trump still consistently says the election was stolen? Is the goal from Democrats to get everybody, all the big names that surrounded him, and, get them guilty of, find them guilty or get them to plead even to small criminal charges, but then in the allocution of it, come out and state, nope, sorry, we were bamboozled. The election wasn't stolen. That it's not about putting Trump in jail. It's about winning the election in 24. That if Trump is going to use that, the Democrats simply say, look, all the lawyers that surrounded him, all were convicted of something and all had to admit under oath that the election was not stolen. Why is Trump still doing this? Is that their goal? That's my question. Meanwhile, the story that I told you about that I'd seen, former Trump campaign lawyer Jenna Ellis pleaded guilty to a felony count of aiding and abetting false statements. The Fulton County District Judge Fannie Willis initially charged her with a bunch of different teams. Her legal team established a legal defense fund for Ellis, which had raised $219,000 as of Tuesday morning. There has been a push. Breitbart, for example, tried to contact her. She did not respond for a comment and the request from Breitbart News if she planned to return the funds since she is not going to trial, and accepted the plea deal. So there was a story that I was trying to find for you there. So there you go. But I just wonder because this is so obvious that there's no RICO case here. It's falling apart. Okay, then why did they do that to begin with? It brings a lot of publicity to it, which then the publicity, because these were RICO charges, because you don't see the left saying, oh, they didn't get him on the RICO charges. All the left is saying is, in promoting the mainstream media, see another Trump lawyer guilty, see another Trump lawyer admitting and pleading guilty, and all because they were promoting that the election was stolen, and every one of them is saying the election is not stolen. And therefore, when Trump continues on that path, they simply say, look how isolated he is. All of his great supporters. And I remember, to many Republicans and Trump supporters, Lynn Wood, Jenna Ellis, Sidney Powell were absolute heroes. They were deities for what they were doing. And so I wonder if that is actually the goal of the Democrats, not to actually put Trump in jail, but, hey, make it so he can't win the election. And how do you do it? Have everybody around him. And I guess the big prize would be Giuliani, but still Sidney Powell and Jenna Ellis. Lynn Wood having to testify. What is he going to say under oath? All those things come out, and is the goal just to isolate Trump in 2024 and say, see, he's still promoting the fact he's still promoting the fact that the election was stolen. All the people, all his lawyers have now stated under oath that was false. Interesting stuff. What else do we got here that I want to make sure we bring? Oh, yeah, here we go. This is from Breitbart here. Democrats responding to the $200,000. House Oversight Committee Chair James Comer on Monday blew holes into James Biden's reason, this is Joe's brother, for allegedly cutting President Joe Biden a $200,000 check in 2018, claiming it is a story contrived out of their rear end. James Biden, Joe Biden's brother, denied the $200,000 check he gave Joe Biden was due to a pre-existing business relationship. He insisted the money was a return payment for money that Joe Biden lent him. Comer believes that doesn't make a difference, and he's got a great point. He believes the $200,000 payment is suspicious because the money flowed through a distressed entity, AmeriCorps, which loaned James Biden a total of $600,000. On March 1st, 2018, AmeriCorps wired James Biden $200,000. That same day, James Biden sent Joe Biden a $200,000 check. Comer, who subpoenaed James Biden's financial records in September, said James Biden's financial records contradict his claims. Comer told Fox Business on Monday, this check that Jim Biden wrote to Joe Biden came on the same day he received a $200,000 loan from a company that was on the verge of bankruptcy and today is bankrupt. On the check to Joe Biden, his brother put loan repayment. Now the White House is saying that Joe Biden loaned his brother money. Comer says, I don't believe he did. Let's say they pull something out of their rear end that says Joe Biden loaned Jim Biden the money. Either way, we have James Biden's personal bank records, and I can say with confidence he had no money to pay back Joe Biden other than the $200,000 wire that came from AmeriCorps Health Company. So either Joe Biden was paid $200,000 as part of an influence peddling scheme payback, kickback, dividend, or Joe Biden actually made the loan to his brother, and because his brother influence peddled AmeriCorps Health, he paid him back $200,000. Either way, whether Joe Biden loaned him the money doesn't matter. Which is a solid point. Either Joe Biden made $200,000 or he didn't lose $200,000. Either way, Joe Biden is $200,000 better off because his family's influence peddling scheme. And like everything else, we know that Joe Biden met the CEO. We know that Jim Biden made a pitch for AmeriCorps Health that he could help them get all sorts of money from the Middle East through his brother's contacts in the Middle East. How do we know this? This isn't again an allegation from Republicans looking for the evidence. This is from the bankruptcy filings of AmeriCorps. This is a classic influence peddling 101, and Joe Biden, as is always the case, was front and center, but this time we have hard evidence that he benefited $200,000. You know, it's interesting because, what's his name? Oh, I can't think of his name. Goldman. Representative Goldman came out. I'm like, man, every time he speaks, it's like, do you understand what you're saying? Because he made the same thing. The Republicans are making a big deal of this. Joe Biden just cares about his family, and this just showed that Joe Biden loaned his brother $200,000 because he cared about his brother. Well, actually, by saying that Joe Biden loaned money to his brother and his brother paid him back, showed that James Biden, because he owed his brother, was doing influence peddling with AmeriCorps, promising them something, money from the Middle East that he did not deliver because he owed his brother and his brother wanted his money back. It does the opposite. When I saw that from the story from Goldman, they're just going after Joe Biden, who cares about his family. It's like, no, you can't make that case. In fact, the loan, if Joe Biden did give him the loan, it makes it look even worse. Because at that point, there was an incentive for influence peddling. Wow, this is really getting good. So, but the Biden family did respond yesterday. That was the point. So they responded, and the Democrats responded, and it was like it was really poor. It's like, really? That's your point? That since Joe Biden lent James Biden the money, then what? Now, Goldman did say that Comer is cherry-picking the bank records to fit the narrative. And I guess we'll see whether that's true or not. Comer can release more of the bank records. And I'm sure if it gets to the point of the impeachment inquiry and they're in front of the Congress and Democrats can ask questions, it will come up at that point. As Comer said, I've seen the accounts. There was no, James Biden didn't have $200,000 to pay him back. It came directly from AmeriCorps. The transfer went from there to there. Are they going to make the case that money is fungible? Are the Bidens going to make that case? Well, no, there was money from 20 different other bank accounts that James had of $20,000 each, and money is fungible, and he put it in there, and then he took it out. Well, you'd be able to know whether that happened or not. But it would be interesting if they made the case, if the Bidens made the case money is fungible after the whole Iran $6 billion. All right, 866-90-RED-EYE.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. I'm Gary McNamara. Eric is out sick. Get better, Eric. All right. This is a Second Amendment story is worth mentioning. Judge John Cronin struck down, federal judge, John Cronin struck down New York City's gun controls that he found gave city officials unconstitutional discretion in the issuance of gun permits. Cronin struck down New York City's good moral character and good cause provisions, concluding that they gave city officials a degree of leeway in judgment sufficient to provide them cover in denying permits for law-abiding citizens. Absolutely. He tested the two provisions in light of the Supreme Court's Bruin 2022 decision and then wrote, in sum, having considered defendants' historical materials and applying the standards set in Bruin, the court determines that the magnitude of discretion afforded to New York City licensing officials empowered them to evaluate an applicant's good moral character and good cause in deciding whether to permit that applicant to exercise his or her Second Amendment rights is not constitutionally permissible under the Second and 14th Amendments. Elsewhere, Cronin emphasized that allotting city officials the authority to judge good moral character and good cause in order to issue gun permits lacks any grounding in our nation's historical tradition of firearm regulations. Moreover, Cronin found that the plaintiff suffered irreparable harm in being denied his Second Amendment rights. Cronin's decision is stayed until October 26th to afford defendants an opportunity to consider their appellate options and whether they wish to seek a stay pending any appeal. That's not going to go any other way once it gets to if it gets to the Supreme Court, if they attempt to appeal it. Yeah, what's good moral character? I voted for Trump. Sorry, you don't have good moral character.
This is Red Eye Radio on West.